from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Thursday night, live and national. I'm glad I knew what day it was today, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys again. 833-482-5337 is the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ, if you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation. And, of course, the breaking news as of now, and that's kind of our job here, right, to make sure that we keep you up to speed on everything that's happening in America at night. And just, half hour ago, 40 minutes ago, the Supreme Court weighed in and said, no, we will not intervene in the Trump case tomorrow. So the Trump sentencing will continue as scheduled. And that is something that I think a lot of us expected the court to weigh in, simply because of all of the extenuating circumstances. But it's clear that they're not going to. 4 justices decided to vote to kick it out or do whatever to get involved. But ultimately, Roberts did not. Roberts, and I think it was Barrett. Roberts and Barrett who did not. So I've been looking at the trolling on the internet, and there's been a fair amount of trolling. There's a bunch of people out there saying, I told you, never liked that lady from the beginning. Listen, this is how these people are, right? Ultimately, you can never really reliably count on them. I think some of us get used to the fact that we have such great justices in Clarence Thomas and in Samuel Alito, and we get very used to that. But ultimately, we have what we have, right? And Amy Coney Barrett has signaled, I'm going to say, independence from her conservative viewpoints more than once. So, again, the big news here, Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision says no. They have refused President-elect Trump's request to stop the criminal proceeding, or the sentencing, rather, which is now, hours away tomorrow morning. And this was pretty much the last pathway for Trump's attorneys to avoid receiving whatever sentence is going to be imposed upon him for the 34 count conviction that happened in New York, which again was a fake, phony, and fraud in my opinion, right? The whole thing is lawfare. And I think this is why. And it came to light during the trial and even more so after the trial. And in my opinion, by judging through the last election, the American people see right through this as well. People that didn't like Trump before, they like Trump now. Why? Because they realize this guy's getting railroaded. All of that, this whole big election, this whole bunch of momentum. But yet the deep state does what the deep state does. So that's that story. We're going to get into this a little bit more throughout the evening and tomorrow once we have, what the verdict is going to be, what the sentencing is going to be. We know that Judge Merchan has indicated that he would not impose any jail time, but I don't know what he's planning on, So it's very interesting. It's interesting to see what's going on. This is definitely a first, right? Precedent is being set. Now, 4 of the justices on the court, Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh, dissented in the case today. But, of course, it was Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett that joined with the more liberal justices to deny Trump's request. Now, some of the reasons that are in the order they denied Trump's request because of, here's a quote, the alleged evidentiary violations at President-elect Trump's state court trial can be addressed in the ordinary course on appeal. That was Coney Barrett and the other one. Oh, all of the dissenting opinions, that's what they felt. Second, the burden that sentencing will impose on President-elect Trump's responsibilities is relatively insubstantial in light of the trial court's stated intent to impose a sentence of unconditional discharge after a brief virtual hearing, the order continued. So they're saying that they're not getting involved because the state court has signaled that they're not going to put him in jail, and that obviously would impede his ability to be president. But since the court has signaled that they're not going to do that, they said, hey, we're not getting involved. However, what does that do? That literally, you take your foot and you put it right in the door, right? As they're slamming the door in your face, you put your foot in the door, and now you've got to weigh in. And that's what they do. So they've got to weigh in to be able to do this yet again. The lawfare will continue if it's not ended, right? If it's not put down, if you will. So not very encouraging, but I'm hopeful that on appeal, things will get done. It'll get thrown out. It'll be reversed, and that'll be the end of it. But very interesting. Let me see. Trump reacted to this, and he said, I read it, and I thought it was a fair decision, actually, Trump said. So I'll do my little thing tomorrow. They can have fun with their political opponent. What a gentleman. How gracious. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office declined to comment on the decision. The Supreme Court's denial of Trump's emergency application caps his extensive efforts, yada, yada, yada. This is a piece in the Hill, by the way. And we'll see what happens there. Now, other news, because there's other news, and I could stay on that all day. But some of the other news that's here, let me see. We're going to get to some wildfires in a little bit. I want to also get to the economy. I'm going to dig in on the economy because the question that was going on the last couple of years was, will the dollar survive, right? Will the dollar survive? So the question I'm posing tonight is, will the BRICS movement survive, right? The consortium known as BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa consortium, along with, whatever it is, a couple of dozen other countries. Will that survive? I don't know that it does without Biden. I think it really only caught some steam because of Biden, because of inflation. I think that tariffs are largely going to offset that. I think Trump's magnetism for investment, as we've been seeing, like Sun Bank and these other investors that are coming here talking about hundreds of billions, tens of billions of dollars that are coming into the United States, I think that's going to make a big difference. So we're going to have that conversation with a former White House economist. That's coming up straight ahead. Plus, what else do we got for you? I got a few things. Forgive me, I haven't finished drinking my coffee, so I'm not as animated as usual. I have to have my little cafecito. Free plug, I drink Cafe Bustelo. It's great. Espresso. After the BRICS topic, I want to get into BlackRock. BlackRock, they own everything, and whatever they don't own, they try to buy, right? They started gobbling up all of these single-family homes in the last couple of years, making the inventory very, very slim across the country. Anyway, they are now retreating, seemingly, from the initiative that they were pushing, the Environmental Social Governance Initiative, ESG. So I want to dig into that as well. Plus, we're going to talk about the anatomy of a wildfire with somebody who was out there in Maui and literally wrote a book on it. So keep it locked right here. Lots to discuss, plus your calls. Let's never forget those. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
President-elect Donald Trump is expanding his call for tariffs on goods imported to the U.S. On Truth Social today, Trump threatened 100% tariffs on a group of 9 nations if they try to replace the U.S. dollar. It's after Trump announced he will impose a 25% tariff on imports from both Mexico and Canada. Trump had what he called a productive meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago on Friday. Trudeau warned of the negative impacts tariffs could have on American consumers.
That is a report from just about a month ago, before Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was ridiculed out of office, announcing his resignation. But the truth remains, right? And the bottom line there is that Trump is strengthening the U.S. dollar and our economy by use of tariffs, by use of his personality, his magnetism for investment in the United States, to create a robust economy once again. And I find this to be phenomenal, because the question was, will the dollar survive? Will BRICS take over? And I think the conversation now is, will BRICS survive? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. Let's see. Let's bring it over to our guest, former White House economist, both for President Reagan and President Trump, Steve Moore, co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Sir, welcome back.
Hey, Rich, so good to be with you. Thanks so much. Happy New Year to you.
Likewise, Happy New Year to you. And Steve Moore, I want to get your take on that, because I find it remarkable. I never really lost faith in the dollar, and not even because I knew Trump was going to win, but I really just didn't lose faith in the dollar. Maybe that's just me and my own naivete. But a lot of people were kind of jumping ship on the dollar and really cheering on Vladimir Putin and his gold-backed idea for a BRICS currency. And now I think the question's becoming, will the BRICS currency survive? What's your take? Do you think they both survive? Do you think the dollar reigns? What say you?
Well, there's no doubt about it that the U.S. is by far the dominant currency in the world. The dollar will remain the world reserve currency. The only thing that could compete with the dollar, I mean, by the way, it's a joke. If you were worried about the dollar, would you actually invest in rubles or Brazil or China or these countries, India? I mean, that's a joke. So there's nothing to worry about a BRICS.
Well, Steve, I'm going to say a lot of people took it seriously. A lot of people were saying China and Russia are gobbling up all the gold, and we need a gold-backed currency.
Well, you know what? By the way, I'm in favor of a gold-backed currency, And so I guess what I was starting to say is that I think central bankers are corrupt. They're arrogant. And I would like to see a gold-backed dollar. Now, I know, some of my economist friends think that's a bad idea. But, what you want in a currency is a currency that holds value. Now, I'm a big believer in the U.S. economy. I agree with you entirely, Rich, that good things are coming, big things are coming that are going to make America a more prosperous place. And I have been proud to play a very small role in that with Donald Trump for what he did with the economy in his first term. I think the second term could be even better. But I will say this, though, that the Federal Reserve, I mean, if you look at what the Federal Reserve has done, they've cut rates a few times now. Inflation is starting to creep up a little bit, which is a bad thing. I don't want to see inflation come back. I don't think anybody does. And I think that, but look, overall, it's going to be, I'm really optimistic about the U.S. economy. And I'll tell you, Trump, you know how, as you know, on January 20th, that's the inauguration day. And traditionally, the president takes the oath of office on the Capitol Hill steps and then gets in the motorcade and goes down Pennsylvania Avenue. It's an iconic event. And I'm told by my friends in the transition that Trump isn't even going to wait till he's going to, as soon as he takes that oath of office, he's going to run into the Capitol and start signing these executive orders that Biden, reversing a lot of the crazy policies that Biden has been put in place. I don't know if you saw this idiotic idea of Joe Biden to ban gas heaters in people's homes.
Water heaters. Unbelievable.
So those kinds of things are going to be gone.
That's crazy. Now, Steve Moore, I agree, and I've heard similar that Trump is not taking anything for granted. He's jumping right in, making these moves very, very quickly, which is what I think the American people expect.
Yes.
What do you think that first order of business, of course, immigration and all those things are there, but economically speaking, is it going to be opening up more drilling? I mean, I heard somebody say that he's changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico because Biden said you can't drill there, so he's changing it to the Gulf of America because you could drill there if it has a different name. And I'm thinking he's the president; he could just say no, we're not doing that anymore. So, do you think he's just going to open up drilling everywhere? What do you think that first course of action, economically speaking, is going to be like?
Well, first of all, shame on Joe Biden for basically taking millions and millions of prime oil and gas lands offline. And Trump said this very well at his press conference the other day. He said, "Look, you're talking about tens of trillions of dollars of assets the United States has, and we're not going to tap into it. It's like sitting on top of a treasure chest with trillions of dollars in it, and you're not going to dig it up." I mean, it's absolutely crazy, and that's something that Trump will hopefully reverse. Although I'm hearing that it may take an act of Congress. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, but yes, absolutely, we should use every bit of energy we have. We should use our oil, our gas, our coal. We are the Saudi Arabia of coal in this country. We have the cleanest coal. We should use nuclear power. We should, when it's appropriate, use wind and solar. Wind and solar are never going to be a dominant form of energy because they're not scalable, but we can get some of our energy from that. And what I'm saying is, wouldn't it make more sense for us to get our energy here at home than have to rely on Iran and OPEC and Russia and these other countries that hate us? Trump gets that. Many of my liberal friends do not understand that. And Biden has been, do you remember, Rich, what his first executive order was when Biden came into office?
He stopped energy.
Yeah, it was to kill the Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you Trump is going to be pro-energy development. But you asked me what the top priority is. For me, and everybody has different top priorities, but for me, I think that the most important thing that has to get done I'm going to give you two top priorities if I can. One is what you mentioned earlier. We got to secure the border, absolutely. But the second one is we got to get this tax cut passed, because if we don't do it this year, in Congress dawdles, then the average person and household in America is going to pay a $3,000 tax increase next year. So doing nothing is not an option.
Yeah, I agree with that. Folks, Steve Moore knows a whole lot about a whole lot when it comes to the economy, having served Ronald Reagan and, of course, President Trump. And he's been around the block several times, and he's not even that old. But I want to make sure. What's that?
I'm 64 now, so but can I say something just very briefly? Because what you just said, I mean, I don't say this to brag or boast. I say that.
But you know what?
So
Hold that thought, Steve, because the music's going to cut you off. Folks, we're going to come right back with my buddy Steve Moore. He's an economist extraordinaire. He's a really good guy, one of the better economists out there. And we always bring the best ones on this program. Keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with Steve Moore, co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you. We're live. We're national. You know the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ. And we're continuing our conversation with Steve Moore. Steve Moore is a former economist in the Reagan administration, a former economist in the Trump administration, and he's also the co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. And if you don't get their daily email, you're missing out. Go to their website, committeetounleashprosperity.com. It's absolutely free. And not only do I read this, but I started reading it because I know Steve Moore from my days in local radio in New York City. and he has a show in New York City as well. So I'm happy to always have him on the national show now, and I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you, sir. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. And can I just finish what I was saying right before the break, which is, you were so nice to mention the fact that I work, for Reagan and for Trump. And I am just so proud of that. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think about this, Rich. I've worked for two of our greatest presidents in modern times. And, so that is, and I want that to put that on my tombstone.
Right. Well, and I look at it from the perspective of practicality, where I say, I don't know a whole bunch of economists that I could say. So when you were dealing with number crunching from Carter's administration or from Biden's, you know both, right? You're able to really juxtapose these things because you were there doing the work. And I think that's, a nuanced insight that is rare.
Well, I'm not going to say anything negative about Jimmy Carter because we laid him to rest today. Yeah. But I will say this, that, I think Joe Biden will go down as one of our worst presidents in history. I think that what he's done to our economy, people say, how fast can we fix things? He's put us in a pretty deep hole. My God, he came in 4 years, about $7 trillion. And what did we get for it, Rich? So if I sound a little angry, I am. I mean, when you've got a president going out saying, "Oh, by the way, the tens of trillions of dollars, we're going to put that off limits." It's people always ask me, "Is he doing this intentionally to try to harm America?" So I am angry because I think so many of the things that he did. I mean, why did he let in 10 million illegal immigrants into this country?
Yeah, this is one of those things. I honestly wrestle with myself. Sometimes it's sabotage. This guy's destroying the country. And then there's days where I'm a little bit more empathetic. And I think, sometimes people are just so caught up in their own BS that they don't realize the damage that's being done.
Yeah.
I don't know which one is true.
Yeah. Well, look, the great news is Trump has a very pro-growth, pro-business agenda. He is on the top of his game. He has so much political capital right now. He is more popular today, Rich, than he has ever been.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's clear to me that he is. I mean, now he is the survivor of an assassination attempt 2 times over, right? At least he is the winner of the popular vote and the Electoral College, which a Republican hasn't done in a couple of decades. So, I mean, these are really big achievements.
I mean, it's one of the greatest comebacks in history of politics. And the other thing I'll say about Donald Trump is whether you love Trump or don't like him, he is the hardest working man I've ever met in my life. I've never met anybody like. I know you're a hardworking guy. You're up till 2 a.m. every morning working, but this guy, he would call me sometimes 1 a.m. Sometimes he'd call me at 6 a.m. I'm like, Mr. President, do you ever sleep? And he's on the job, and contrast that with Joe Biden, probably works 3 hours a day.
Right. Sleeps the other 21. Now, Steve Moore, I want to pull on a little thread here. We talked about Justin Trudeau a little bit before, Canada and the economy, and he was on this evening with Jake Tapper on CNN, and he says that he says a lot of things, not the least of which is that he's resigning. It's not because of Trump, but he talked about the USMCA deal, and he was proud of it as if it was something that he'd put together. Listen to this.
Did the re-election of Donald Trump and this more direct confrontation with Canada over this issue play any role at all in your decision to resign as leader of your party and prime minister?
No, on the contrary. What we were able to do during the first presidency of Mr. Trump was work together in a very challenging situation to come out with a very strong win-win in Canada-U.S. relations with the renegotiation of the USMCA. It is a great deal for both of our countries. We've seen trade grow. We've seen opportunities grow. We've seen wealth grow in both of our countries for workers, for businesses. Working together concretely is something that we've been able to do in the past, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him for the next 2 months while I'm still in office.
Steve Moore, are you buying what the prime minister is selling?
No, I'm not buying it. And by the way, I had predicted in one of my columns about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so you can look this up. Not Monday morning quarterbacking here. I believe, I wrote 3 or 4 weeks ago that you're going to see a Trumpian revolution all over the world. Trump, I mentioned Trump's popularity here at home. He's very popular abroad with working class people. And I think you're going to see what happened in Canada with Justin Trudeau chased out of office. I think it's going to happen in Britain. I think it's going to happen in Germany. I think it's going to happen in France. I think it's going to happen in Japan. People are sick of arrogant, out of touch, selfish politicians who do not put their country and their citizens first. And so I think Trumpism is going global. I really do.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Steve Moore. I totally agree. So we've covered BRICS. You think that BRICS will remain secondary, but do you think that it will crumble, or do you think it just continues to be an idea they try to build like they've been trying to build it for the last 20 years, 15 years?
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. I mean, these are countries that are basically third world countries that are going to compete with the U.S. dollar. It's not going to happen. Now, for people, if you're nervous
but they do
about
have a lot of energy production, and I think that's why a lot of people put so much stock in it.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, but it's not going to happen. They're not going to take over the dollar. But what I was going to say to your listeners is, if you're worried about the dollar, and you should be, because we have a massive debt, as you know, Rich, $37 trillion, then what I would recommend people is, maybe look at alternative currencies like cryptocurrencies, like maybe just have some money invested in gold, have some money invested in Bitcoin as a way to protect yourself, because, our politicians have devalued the value of our dollar. You know that. Yep.
Now, I want to follow up on that, because this is true, right? It doesn't matter to me what anybody, any White House economist tells me about the level of inflation today. I know how much I could buy a couple of years ago, and I know how much I can't buy now. And it's not the same, and it's not 3% either. So when I look at that,
Rich, sorry to interrupt, but I think you're right.
No, go ahead.
They have understated the real inflation rate. That the official number is 20%. When I was going to say,
everything is 20% more expensive.
But my wife would, I'd come home, literally, she'd get mad at me. She'd grab me by the arm and say, Steve, you're going to the grocery store with me. You got to see what things cost. For most Americans, they think that the inflation rate that they have, the things they have to buy, their gasoline, they have to pay their insurance, they have to pay groceries. Those are up by 30 or 40%, Rich.
Oh, insurance is out of control.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned put some money in gold, put some money in crypto. I recently got into a new business venture, and it's a lot of gold, some diamonds. It's a jewelry business, and honestly speaking, it probably would have been better to get in some years ago when gold was cheaper, because you could probably make more money. With gold being kind of expensive now, it's a little bit more expensive. But my point is that the trend I see with gold is that gold continues to just go up and go up. It's pretty steady. It goes down a little, for 5 minutes, and goes right back up. Do you expect, some of your colleagues are out there saying that gold is going to hit $5,000 in the next year or so. Do you believe that to be true?
No, I don't. But I will say this, then the question is, why would you buy gold? And I'm not saying put all your money in gold by any means, because, the U.S. stock markets have been pretty good.
Right.
What I'm saying is, what is the best way to have a hedge against inflation? And that is, you want some gold and some, other, you can buy an inflation protected bond, because you want to have a diversified, you want to protect against your downside risks, and gold is a way to do it. I'm not saying go out and buy, Fort Knox. I'm saying, yes, you want in your retirement portfolio some gold. Maybe, you mentioned diamonds or silver. Yeah, those will retain value over time. And you know what? The Federal Reserve, doesn't matter how much money they print, they can't devalue the value of gold.
Well, there's debate on that, not the Federal Reserve, but there's a lot of debate on whether gold is artificially suppressed because it has not increased the way auto insurance has, for example.
Well, I mean, if you think that it's artificially depressed, then that's a reason to probably try to buy more.
Buy more. That's what I said.
We will see. Look, I'm not an investment advisor. My wife does our investment for us. I'm just saying, as an economist, I do think we should worry about our national debt and all of the, what do countries do when they get into a debt problem? They inflate their currency.
Right. And that's the reason I bring it up, because I feel like historically the best hedge against inflated currency, at least in the United States, has been gold. Right. Gold has always been there. It goes up as the dollar goes down. So if gold were to go up to $5,000 an ounce, what would that mean for the dollar, especially with Trump coming in and all the investment that's coming in along with his new administration? To me, it seems like the dollar is going to go up, which either should stabilize gold or perhaps even we might see it taper off.
That's true. Although, one thing that Trump is going to do is because he's going to cut taxes, reduce regulations, pro-business. The reason they call people like me supply-side economists is I believe when you increase the supply and the productive capacity of the country, which Trump will do, if you produce more apples, what happens to the price of apples? It goes down. So I think Trump could, if he can get his agenda passed, then I think we're going to see stable prices. And I think we're going to see a lot of income made. So I'm bullish right now. I really am. I'm bullish on America.
Yeah, me too. What do you think about interest rates?
Well, they've been going up. See, this is the Fed. I mean, I talked about arrogant politicians. What about the arrogant Fed? They act as if they're some kind of fiefdom. They were not responsive to anyone. I think Trump should have the authority to fire the Fed.
Fire them. Yeah.
I mean, is the Fed in the Constitution, Rich? I don't see anything about
Last
that.
I checked, no.
Yeah. So that is a problem. We've got a Fed that is acting as if they're, like the Pope, they're infallible. I don't think they're infallible. They're the ones who allowed us to have a 21% inflation over 4 years.
In many ways, Steve Moore, they are the problem. Steve Moore, I want to get one more question out of you. Do you think you could stick around for a couple of minutes, or do you have to run and talk to President Trump?
Sure.
All right. So stick with me, folks. We're coming right back with economist Steve Moore.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
It's always hard to bring down prices when somebody else has screwed something up like they did, but we'll bring them down. We'll get them down. Energy is going to bring down prices. We're going to have a lot of energy, and energy is what brought it up. Energy and their bad spending is what brought it up, and energy is going to bring it down. We're going to have prices down. I think you're going to see some pretty drastic price reductions. As an example, food, bacon, ham, apples, everything has gone through the roof. It's one of the reasons I won.
My apples are too expensive. I'm voting for Donald Trump. Steve Moore, I agree with President Trump. It's hard to get prices back down. How much down do you think they're going to get?
Well, I think overall, I just want to get back to price stability. In fact, in other words, if the prices go down, that's called deflation, and that can actually be worse than inflation. All I want is stable prices so that, a dozen eggs costs, tomorrow what it costs today. The one thing that fluctuates greatly in price is, of course, the gas price. You and I have lived through an era where gas prices go up and down and up and down. I think we could realistically go back to $2 a gallon, and that would be an amazing thing. Because remember, they went up to like $5 a gallon under Biden. But what that means is you have to produce a lot more oil here at home. And we have so much oil and gas in this country, in Texas, in North Dakota, we've got the Midwest with the fracking that's going on there. Remember, some of my leftist friends wanted to get rid of fracking. I don't even know if they know what it is, but it's something that produces a lot of oil and gas. And so, we can bring down the price of oil. Right now, it's $75 a barrel. I think we can bring it down to $50. And if we do that, we're talking then about $2 to $2.25 a gallon gasoline.
And when that happens, I think everybody's making more money, right? Everybody's buying more stuff. There's more trucks on the road, and we're doing good. Now, speaking of prices on that, housing, fuel, food, these are the big deals. rents have gone up for people that are renting. I don't think I've ever met anybody that said, oh, my rent just went down. So I don't anticipate rent going down, but I do think the cost of housing might go down, but there may not be a correlation.
It could. I mean, I have 3 sons that are in their 20s or early 30s. And, that's about the time you start thinking about, buying a house and settling down. And they can't. And, they're doing fine with their careers. They're doing fine, Rich, but they can't buy. Are you kidding? They can't buy a house.
Right. How do you buy a house when every house is $1 million?
Yeah, I mean, so it's. I think you're right. I think we're going to need to see a reduction in the housing prices. Nobody's going to be able to afford a home in this country. So that's a big deal as well.
What do you think we got to do to get there, Steve Moore?
Well, the Federal Reserve has to keep the dollar stable. The mortgage rate just hit 7.1% today. I don't know if you saw that, but that's. Yeah, I mean, the mortgage rates are climbing again because people are worried about inflation. And that's where I blame the Fed. I mean, I think this Fed is out of control, frankly, and they keep pumping more and more money into the economy. It's like being addicted to crack cocaine. Yeah, it's wonderful. Oh, look, we got all this cheap money. But then you pay the piper.
Yeah. Steve Moore, I'm out of time here. I could talk about this for days, but I appreciate it, brother. Let everybody know where to find you.
Well, you mentioned the most important thing. If people want to get our free daily Unleashed Prosperity hotline, just go to unleashedprosperity.com and sign up. And you're right, it's free. It costs nothing. My friend Newt Gingrich the other day said it's the first thing he reads every morning. So if you want to be the smartest person in the room, guys, get the unleashedprosperity.com hotline.
Outstanding. Steve Moore, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for being with us tonight.
All right. You too, Rich. Thank you.
You bet. God bless and have a good new year. Folks, we come back. Your calls and more. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
In the 1970s, as you've heard, he protected more land than any other president in history. 50 years ago, he was a climate warrior who pushed for a world where we conserved energy, limited emissions, and traded our reliance on fossil fuels for expanded renewable sources. By the way, he cut the deficit, wanted to decriminalize marijuana, deregulated so many industries that he gave us cheap flights and, as you heard, craft beer. Basically, all of those years ago, he was the first millennial.
That is a clip from President Carter's funeral service earlier today, and that is his son, his grandson, Jason Carter, discussing, a couple of things and cracking a joke. And rumor has it that Michelle Obama did not show up to the actual funeral, and she did it because she's on vacation in Hawaii, but she called it a scheduling conflict. We'll talk about that straight ahead. Plus, your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere, folks. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy to be here with you this Thursday night. We're live and national. It's 7 minutes after 10 p.m. on the East Coast. And the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez is our phone number. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, you get to sound off on what we're talking about, or you could bring something new to the table as well. Happy to have that discussion. And if you disagree with me, I'd love to talk to you even more. I was getting some criticism online, which is not that uncommon for me, but they were saying that I don't allow people to disagree with me. Now, I know some of you guys that are listening right now are listening in new radio stations that just started carrying the show, but we've been at this for a while, and I always give everybody an opportunity to say whatever they want to say, and I give them more time than most hosts do, and yet they still want to have a grievance. And you know why? Because I think the culture on the left is driven by grievance. Now, I'm not going to be unfair and say that a whole lot of what I do is not grievance, right? I have a huge grievance with the left, right? I mean, I make a whole living with my grievances against the left. But I guess in my own biased mind, I think my grievances hold more water than theirs do, because they're really hurting people, hurting the economy, hurting our national security, hurting the public's safety. Look at these fires in California. And for anybody who wants to make the argument that the fires in California are because of Mother Nature, then listen, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn I could sell you. I can even sell you one in the Bronx or Queens if you like. I got bridges. Just let me know what you're looking to buy. Anyway, I want to move on from that. It was just a little rant I wanted to share there, but I really want to talk about what's going on today, right? President Trump about to face the judge tomorrow for sentencing via video. He knows he's not getting locked up, so what can they do? They're going to try and fine him. Whatever they send his way is ultimately going to be something that he's going to fight on appeal. His attorneys brought this to the Supreme Court of the United States, where 4 out of 5 justices agreed that they should put an end to this case to end the lawfare because it interferes with the executive branch. It's lawfare. However, Justice Amy Coney Barrett and her boss, the Chief Justice John Roberts, both sided with the more liberal justices in the in this opinion in a 5-4 decision. So that didn't happen. Now, what's interesting here is their argument was, we're not getting involved because Trump can fight this on appeal and there's no need for us to get involved. The other justices felt that, no, there's an issue here that this has to be done, right? The court has to take these extraordinary steps to minimize these burdens that are being endured by the defendant. I'm reading from a quote here, because he's the president-elect. However, they're saying that whatever is imposed by the court will not ultimately stop him from doing his job. So that's the debate at hand. I wish that we would have put an end to this, because to me, they kind of skirted by, right? They didn't want to take it, and they didn't take it. Like, they're like, no, we're not doing it. We'll make this ruling, but we're not going to get involved. And this just allows for future cases of lawfare. Had they nipped this in the bud, I think America would be a little bit better today as a result. But that's that. Speaking of America today, Jimmy Carter laid to rest. His funeral today. I played a couple of clips of that earlier. And something I want to share with you is a report from, not one of my favorites, but a decent report from David Muir, ABC News. Listen to this.
The president-elect has been critical of Jimmy Carter, even in recent days, as the country was remembering him, with Mr. Trump talking about Jimmy Carter's moves involving the Panama Canal, but also making it clear that he would attend this service. And I think that's really important, across the board for all of these presidents, no matter what party they're from, to send a signal to the country that in these moments we can and must. Look at this moment here. Former Vice President Mike Pence shaking the hand of the president-elect and the First Lady, Melania Trump, obviously shaking hands with Al Gore, but the particular note there, the interaction with Mike Pence, that was fascinating to watch.
Fascinating to watch indeed. Now, listen, this wasn't all flowers and giggles like you heard there with the violins playing in the background. Meanwhile, over at CNN, the reporting was a little bit different, right? You had, let me see, who was this over here? Count Delacula, which number? Shout it out real loud. 14. There we go. Jeff Zeleny on CNN today. He is letting everybody know that Michelle Obama says she can't be at Carter's funeral because of a scheduling conflict, but in reality, she's just on vacation in Hawaii. Listen to this.
One person missing from this is Michelle Obama. I'm told by her advisors that she had a scheduling conflict. She's actually still in Hawaii from an extended holiday vacation, so she's missing there.
She's missing, that's for sure. And, of course, Joe Biden came, and I got to say, he did not put his foot in his mouth this time. He shared a few words as well. I'm not going to get into those right now, but I'll play them for you a little bit later, maybe in the subsequent hour, the very coveted third hour of the program. If your station isn't carrying it, you better get on the horn with your station's program director and let him know, hey, we want to hear this guy keep rambling into the third hour. Again, your calls are coming up, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I also want to talk about BlackRock, this evil, maniacal financial institution that owns everything and wants to own even more of it. Now they're buying everybody's single-family home so that you can't buy one, and at least seemingly it seems that way. And they were one of the original pioneers of jumping on board with the Energy Social Governance Initiative, known as ESG. And now it seems like they're retreating from it. They're saying, I don't know, maybe not so good, forget about it, right? So I don't know how that's going to go. But it's one of those things that we will find out about. Now, I don't normally take calls in the very first segment because, I like to kind of set the stage and set the table. But I'm going to take a very quick one in the time that we have remaining from David in San Francisco, California. He's streaming the show on richvaldez.com. David, I understand you want to disagree with me. Go right ahead.
Well, absolutely. And in fact, I'd disagree with the bulk of the minority of the Supreme Court. You were claiming that they were pulling lawfare by refusing to come down easy on this criminal.
No, that's not what I'm claiming. Just let me set the record straight. No, I am claiming that lawfare was enacted against Trump. The whole reason there's a case in New York with 34 fake, phony fraud counts of the same singular quote-unquote crime, that's the lawfare. And it's the Supreme Court's job to protect the presidency and the constitutional problem at hand by saying, you know what, we have a problem here. These people are using the law for their own benefit, for political purposes. Donald Trump is clearly the victim here. And whatever the adjudication of this case is, we need to get involved to say, look, it doesn't matter if this is Jimmy Carter or if this is Joe Biden or Barack Obama. We should not be using lawfare to go after a political opponent. But instead, they treated this very simply as, on the papers, saying, well, he'll have a chance to go to appeal, which is entirely true. But that doesn't absolve them from their responsibility to be the Supreme Court. So in my opinion, they lost an opportunity. Now, go ahead. You can disagree, but you can't put words in my mouth.
Pretty words, but it's the fact of the matter is the federal court, the U.S. Supreme Court, can't interfere with a state
sure they can.
State ruling. No,
but that's why half or nearly half, 4 of the justices clearly were in favor of doing it. It's not that they can't. Nobody forbade them from doing that. They were able to do it. They just didn't agree to do it, David.
The Supreme Court cannot interfere with the ruling of a jury. And the fact of the matter is...
David, listen to me. Listen to me. If they couldn't have done it, they would have said yesterday, and when Trump's attorneys brought the case, they would have said, oh, we can't do it. You don't have standing. That's outside of our purview. Hasta la vista. But they didn't say that. They said, we're going to hear it and we're going to render a decision. And they did. So you're wrong.
Well, they rendered their decision that they can't interfere with a state court.
That's not what they said. They said that he can go to appeal, not that they can't do it. I mean, what's the old saying from back in the days? You're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Donald Trump called up Alito and had a little conversation with Alito.
Oh,
and then,
gosh, David.
Darn it,
all right,
Alito.
That's enough. I have to hit a break here anyway, but now you're getting into fantasy land because you can't win an argument. Thank you, David. I appreciate you, brother. And I hope your friends and family, if you have any, that are in the Los Angeles area are safe and sound. Folks, we're coming right back to talk about BlackRock and more. Don't go anywhere. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So there's a piece in the Wall Street Journal came out at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So just about 4 hours, 4.5, 5 hours ago. And BlackRock is withdrawing from the climate coalition, backpedaling again on ESG. Again, that's the headline in the Wall Street Journal. World's largest asset manager is latest Wall Street firm to quit climate groups. Larry Fink must be realizing this isn't good for business anymore. For a while, I guess it was good for business. Now it's bad for business. They're pulling out of a United Nations-sponsored climate initiative. Big U-turn for the company. And again, this is the world's largest asset manager telling clients in a letter yesterday that it has formally withdrawn from the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, which was or is, just they're not a part of it anymore. It's an international group of asset managers committed to supporting the goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2050. What's interesting about this as well is that the net zero people, I think this was started by China or somebody like that. China bailed out on this too a few months ago. So apparently everybody's bailing out on this stuff. But that's the story here. And we'll dip back into this article in a bit. I want to bring in our guest because this is what we're going to be talking about right now. And of course, if you want to join the conversation, you're welcome to do it. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. Our guest is the Executive Director of Consumers Research. His name is Will Hild, and he's with us now. Will, welcome.
Great to be with you.
You bet. So we've heard the headline. It's in the Wall Street Journal. It's apparently big news that, something they were pushing people out of, and the basis for a future type of corporate credit score, like the Chinese social credit score, is seemingly taking a back seat. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is, first of all, tremendous news for American consumers. This organization was a consortium of the largest asset managers and the largest banks, whose goal was basically to form a cartel and to force net zero across all aspects of our economy. And without going too many details, if you don't want to go down that road, but net zero is basically a way that increases costs for consumers as we try to, push towards net zero carbon emissions. But the real effect of this is that consumers pay more everywhere from the gas pump to the grocery store, and that's what was been happening. It's part of what's been driving the inflation that we've seen in this country. So having these big banks and this big BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, leave this cartel is first and foremost fantastic news. Now, as far as why they're doing it, the big reason, two factors. Number one is what happened in November, the election of Trump, who has a policy that's in complete 180 from the current administration. And the second reason that didn't get a ton of press because of when the news was released was the day before Thanksgiving, Attorney General Ken Paxton of Texas and 12 other states sued the members of the net zero asset managers. That includes BlackRock, but also State Street and Vanguard, for antitrust activity related to net zero asset managers. So they are running for the hills. They're worried about the federal administration that's incoming, but they're also realizing that there were some significant legal risks related to antitrust activity. And I'm sad to say that it took an attorney general suing them, but they seem to have gotten the message.
Well, let's talk about this antitrust activity, because I think this is something that flies over a lot of people's heads. I know it certainly flies over mine most days. I really never care what BlackRock is doing because I know that BlackRock is typically doing something that doesn't help me. So walk us through it.
Certainly. Well, an asset manager is basically somebody who holds stocks for someone else. And BlackRock specialized in what they called what we call passive investment strategies, meaning they are not so much the Warren Buffett that you give your money to and he says buy, 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 or sell, 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 depending on what he thinks is good. They specialize in holding very low cost index funds, things like the S&P 500 index fund or the Dow Jones index people may have heard of. And the advantage of those funds is you pay very little expense ratios. You pay very little money to BlackRock for controlling those funds because they don't have to make any decisions. They're just holding the shares. And that lends towards an economy of scale. And so BlackRock has been able to hoover up trillions, literally trillions of dollars of state, local, and federal pension funds, along with people's 401ks and individual brokerage accounts. And so they end up controlling, sometimes high single digits, sometimes double digit shares of lots and lots of different companies across the entire economy. And even though they aren't making investment decisions as to what to buy and what to sell most of the time, they do, because of the control of those shares, have a lot of control over who manages those companies. So companies like Disney or Exxon, BlackRock has a significant control of, who sits on their boards and who even manages the company, who their CEO is. And so BlackRock, realizing this, in somewhere around 2014, 2015, 2016, started to become extremely active, not in the investment decisions they were making, because they don't make those, but in the management decisions that they were making over these companies. You had BlackRock coming out and bragging about how they were pushing all these far left agendas like ESG, like race and sex-based quotas for boards, like net zero. And so that's how we got into the position that we've gotten into now. It's this economy of scale related to passive investing, and BlackRock realizing they had so much control.
Interesting, and that's where the antitrust piece comes in. Will Hild, Executive Director of Consumers Research. When we come back, I want to ask you a little bit about some of the other BlackRock activity and your thoughts on what this looks like moving forward. Folks, we're coming right back with Will Hild, and, of course, your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue to be live and national, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And continuing our conversation with Will Hild. I called him Hild. Forgive me for that. Now, Will Hild is the Executive Director of Consumers Research, consumersresearch.org. And, Will, with this development here of BlackRock taking a back seat on ESG. I remember when this was materializing at the end of the Trump administration, it was a big push. They were kind of forcing it the same way, in the same antitrust manner, if you will. All of the companies they had some sort of influence over, they were really exerting this influence to get them towards this leftist push to dealing with people and kind of scoring them and grading them and making sure that these initiatives of the environment and social governance were kind of front and center. With them taking a back seat on the Net Zero Alliance, does this mean that we can expect less wokeism coming from American corporations, or is that a pipe dream on my part?
No, I actually think that's a very reasonable expectation given what we're seeing. I think that a number of American corporations have realized that there's a price to pay for a lot of the activities that they were engaged in. A lot of the stuff they were doing is just flat out illegal. I mean, we went through the antitrust issues with BlackRock, but a lot of these companies were being pushed and then accepting the push and doing it. Incentives to discriminate based on race and sex, specifically in anti-white, anti-male directions. And you're seeing a lot of pushback in that as well, and a lot of companies dumping their DEI programs, or at least significant portions of their DEI programs, because there's increasingly a price to pay. And that's not just the incoming Trump administration, but you also had a Supreme Court ruling that basically said that higher ed is not allowed to discriminate based on race and sex moving forward. And I think that woke a lot of corporations up that what they were doing was a violation of civil rights law here in this country, and they were basically playing Russian roulette with which one of them would get the mega lawsuit. And a number of companies are starting to get sued. Groups like America First Legal, whose President Stephen Miller is going into the administration. That's what they do. They go around and sue corporations who are committing this type of racial discrimination.
Now, I'm glad to hear that. Honestly, I know you've got your finger on the pulse of a lot of this, and I'm glad, because I honestly thought, I'll tell you, I have too much optimism sometimes. I thought when we started seeing a lot of that push, and I thought, well, who's going to go for that? And then I saw it was coming from financial institutions who you would have thought would have been the arbiters of the anti-woke movement, because they're probably more capitalist at financial institutions than any other institution like academia or something like that. But I was wrong. Everybody jumped on. Banks were doing it. Everybody was doing it. And I thought, man, it's the end of an era. But here we have this reversal. And I guess my thinking is that, we were screwed. And it seems like my optimism is somewhat renewed here. So on that same vein, where do we go from here? If these companies, if that movement dissipates, I guess they move on to their next biggest left-wing cause. What's the next thing that you guys at Consumers Research are focused on?
Well, I would say the big thing we're going to be continuing to focus on is mopping up and chiseling out a lot of the cancerous ideology and activity that's still going to be in these corporations. I don't want to paint overly rosy scenario here. You've still got a lot of those same DEI ideologues working at these companies, and even the ones that have significantly trimmed their programs, like McDonald's. A lot of them are dropping the E, because the E in DEI is what basically stands for racial discrimination, the idea of equity, meaning you're going to have the same number of each race or sex, doing something that exists in the population. That's sort of a communist ideology. They're dropping that, but they are keeping other portions of it that are, in some ways just as obnoxious and in many cases just illegal. So don't get me wrong, the momentum has absolutely shifted in our direction. We have the law on our side, and now we have a federal government that's going to be on our side. But we have to keep pushing. And this is a little bit the analogy I like to use. If you've ever gotten sick and the doctor has prescribed antibiotics, we are about halfway through our antibiotic regimen. The symptoms are receding. We're feeling better. We're out of bed. We're moving again. But if we don't take all the rest of our antibiotics, this thing is going to come back. We have to go all the way through and get completely rid of it, or it will come back, and it will come back fiercer than we got it the first time, because it'll be better attuned at defeating some of the objections we had before. So that's what Consumers Research is going to be focused on, is forcing companies like BlackRock, who are pushing not just net zero, but like I said, anti-white and anti-male race and sex-based discrimination. They need to not only stop doing that, we have to get corporate America back to where it was before they started pushing that. So we've got to get we've got to get all the way back to square one, not leave the fight half won.
I love the way that sounds. Folks, we're on with Will Hild. He's the executive director of Consumers Research. And what's your latest, woke alert? Who do you have your eye on?
Well, the one that we just alerted everyone is there were two companies, Kia and TJ Maxx, who were sponsoring something called the Rainbow Library, which you're not going to believe me when I tell you this, but this was a program by the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network to basically push radical LGBTQ propaganda into schools and get it in the hands of kids. And I kid you not, Kia and TJ Maxx were sponsoring this insanity. And so we put out a woke alert on that. Subsequently, Kia has dropped sponsorship of this. I'm happy to say. TJ Maxx is still a sponsor. We're going to stay pushing on them. But that's a perfect example of where you have to keep
Marshall's, Home Goods, and TJ Maxx, right? Did I leave anybody out? Do you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's 100. You're 100% great memory because you're 100% correct. They have multiple companies, multiple brands.
Yeah, well, I think people need to know that. A lot of people who have children, and I'm pretty sure don't agree with that position that they're taking of bringing this sexualized education into the classroom, are attending and purchasing and supporting these companies, and they don't know, but for the work that you're doing. So that's your current woke alert on TJ Maxx and Kia. Kia relenting, TJ Maxx doubling down. And if people want to learn more about the work you're doing, where do they go? How do they find you?
Absolutely. There's a number of sources. First of all, visit us at consumersresearch.org. That's consumersresearch.org. They can sign up for those woke alerts you just mentioned. These are once weekly text message alerts on companies that are going woke, betraying your trust, focusing on woke activists and politicians rather than serving you, the consumer. Highly recommend signing up for that. The other place is on Twitter. You can visit us at Consumers First on Twitter, and my handle is at Will Hild. That's at WILLHILD.
Will Hild, I appreciate the work that you're doing there. Folks, check them out and sign up for the woke alerts at consumersresearch.org. Brother, Godspeed to you. Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much for having us on and talking about this important issue.
You bet. Now, I want to go to the phones because the left does not sleep, as you just heard, whether it's in banking, whether it's in autos, whether it's in retail home goods, right? They're at it in every step of the way. And let's go to the phones. I see Andrew's in Albany, New York on WGDJ. He wants to chime in on the left himself. Andrew, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hey, Rich. This is my first time calling in. I appreciate you taking my call.
My pleasure.
After listening to Will, I got, quite a few more questions. That was great. I don't know much about BlackRock. I've heard things, but I don't know. My brain just short-circuited after listening to, him talk about.
Well, I know you had a comment.
I
know you wanted to say something about Democrats and what you don't like or what bothers you about the left in general.
Oh, yeah. It was that pinhead that called in earlier that was saying, federal courts can't interfere with state courts.
Right.
And that's what I can't stand about them is, okay, we get that, but also they ignore the other complete half that makes their argument invalid, which is that state court interfered with a federal court. They took a dismissed federal case, put it back together, manipulated it, turned it into fake felonies, and he has no problem with that.
Yeah. That's part of being a leftist is being able to fabricate things kind of on demand.
Oh, absolutely. And, accuse you to your face of something that they're doing to you right behind your back.
Projectionism. That's for sure.
Exactly. I mean, it's terrible. And that's one thing I talked about the other day was I called in and nobody seemed to see it. So I'm hoping people get this word out. Your audience, I'm hoping, will go and watch the movie. It's called Escape from Kabul.
I haven't heard of it, but we'll check it out. I'm guessing it's about the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. Andrew, I got to pause right here. We have a commercial break lined up, but I appreciate it. Big shout to you on WGDJ. And amigos, we continue with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So there's videos all over social media. But welcome back, by the way. It's me, Rich Valdez, keeping you company all night until, I don't know, midnight in some areas, 1 a.m. in others. And the videos are of these officials that are, going to different hearings talking about why they have failed the people in California. And one of them is the CEO of the L.A. Water Department, a woman named Janice Quiñones. And it's a little more than a minute, this clip. But I was planning on playing it in the next hour. But I think I'm going to play it for you here because, and maybe I'll play it twice because, I get to do that. But I really don't do that too often. But I do want to, I think I want you to hear it, and I want you to hear it twice because I think it's really, really interesting. In my opinion, this woman is being set up as the fall guy, right? She's being set up as the person that's going to take the fall. And I'm not saying she shouldn't take the fall, but I'm saying clearly, Gavin Newsom is the person that we should be looking at, right? He's the one that diverted the water from the dam. He's the one that caused all these problems, and he is the one that is saying, "Look, don't look at me. Look at the locals. Listen to Gavin Newsom, governor of California."
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, it ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire. You have something at this scale. But again, that's going to be determined by the local.
Now, listen, I can appreciate that. I really can. I can understand unprecedented need. I'm a New Yorker. I remember 9/11. We were not prepared for the World Trade Center collapsing. I do, right? We weren't prepared, but guess what? Nobody gave up. You figured out ways to do it, and everybody was, chipping in from across the water. Jersey cops are all over the place. And I'm not saying that's not the case here, but I am saying you had the leadership of America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, and it went a long way. I don't feel like that's happening here. Every time we get an update, we're hearing it's 0% contained. Come on. How much 0% containing can we do, right? And I'm not blaming firefighters, not for a second. Firefighters fight fires with water. And the videos I saw today were firefighters literally grabbing women's handbags to pour water. Where they were, a woman was watching her television. She put this on social media. I want you to give this a quick listen. Oh, we don't have that one. Well, she's watching television, and she sees the firefighters, and they're going up to their truck, and they can't hook up a hose for whatever reason, and they're using women's handbags and other receptacles and running over to the fire, tossing this water over the wall. And it was just surreal to watch. Now, I think it's surreal because I think, wow, the bravery of these guys, right? The equipment isn't working, everything's failing except for them. So the firefighters are doing what they have to do. Was the water there? No. Should the water have been there? Sure. Did Newsom do things that prevented water from getting there? Absolutely. If you missed last night's show, make sure you check out the podcast at richvaldez.com. That's Valdez with an S, by the way, because we had a great conversation with Jen Kearns, who was Assistant Secretary of State in California, and she explained the 8 reasons why this is actually happening in California, and only one of them was environmental. The rest of them were political. But when you have this situation, clearly people are going to start playing the blame game and, pointing to the left, pointing to the right. It's that guy's fault. So now this woman, Quinones, now she's in the line of fire. And she explains, kind of like Newsom, we don't have the water pressure because we can't get enough water into our reservoirs quick enough to create the water pressure because we're expending so much water. And this is not a defense of their failure. It's a failure, and it's one that you have to mitigate quickly and move on from, because the destruction continues in the midst of it. So hopefully I've left enough time for us to play that clip when we come back. If not, you'll hear it on the coveted third hour of the program. And if your affiliate doesn't carry the third hour of the show, make sure they do, or just check us out at richvaldez.com. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Familia, it's Rich Valdez keeping you company for another hour or so. And our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Doing lots of calls in the next hour, so make sure you get those calls in. If you're planning on calling us later, call us earlier rather than later. I don't want you to miss out. And I want to go to Partridge, Missouri. That's near, I don't know. What's that near, Albert?
I'm right here by Joplin. It is Carthage with a C.
Carthage.
Joplin, Missouri, 10 miles away. Yeah, I'm an over-the-road truck driver, first-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, thank you, brother. Thanks for calling.
Catch you. Yeah, catch you on a 102.9, I believe. I'm delivering a load of cheese as we speak. I just wanted to address, and I was listening to your show here. I'm getting unloaded currently. And
we're going to run out of time, so make it punchy.
Yeah. My main concern has been the parking for us over-the-road drivers. There is no parking. They charge us to park. Usually they wind up on the side of the roads. I hope the Trump administration does something about this and get somebody into the Department of Transportation that can really address it. They're too slow with what's going on.
That's something I don't really know a ton about, and I appreciate you bringing up to my attention, because one thing I can tell you is I'm from a blue state, New York, and grew up in another blue state, New Jersey. And what I can tell you about here is we've got truck stops out every couple of miles on the turnpike, and I always see them packed with tractor trailers. So I'm hopeful, in my mind, that's how it is everywhere. So that was news to me. I've never been an over-the-road truck driver, but I salute each and every one of you that does that. And Sean Duffy, I don't know him personally, but I've interviewed his daughter, who's very bright. And I can tell you, I think he's a solid guy. He's got a great reputation. I think he's going to be a good transportation secretary. So let's see what the future holds for us. Folks, we're going to play that clip of the why there's no water coming out of the hydrants when we come back. Albert in Carthage, Missouri. Thanks for streaming the show. Thanks for the call, brother. Shout out to everybody in your neck of the woods. Amigos, we shall return. And if we don't, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. It's another packed hour with you guys, and our phone number, we are live and national, so if you want to call us, here it is, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ, and this is an interesting day. There's so much going on. California is being destroyed, at least in the area of Los Angeles. And the country put a president to rest today. Jimmy Carter laid to rest. There was a service yesterday and a final funeral service today, of which Michelle Obama could not make. She made I don't think she was at the other one either, but she didn't make the one today, that's for sure. And she said she couldn't because there was a scheduling conflict because she's actually still in Hawaii on extended holiday. That's according to CNN, by the way, of all places. And President Biden spoke today at President Carter's funeral, saying that we have to stand up to the abuse of power. I don't know who's abusing power here besides Biden, but listen to this.
We have an obligation to give hate no safe harbor, and to stand up to what my dad used to say is the greatest sin of all, the abuse of power. That's not about being perfect, because none of us are perfect. We're all fallible, but it's about asking ourselves, are we striving to do things, the right things? What values? What are the values that animate our spirit? Do we operate from fear or hope, ego or generosity? Do we show grace? Do we keep the faith when it's most tested?
That's Biden talking about abusing power. And, some say he abused power. Some say he didn't use the power he had. I'd say he did a little bit of both. And his ICE director, Patrick Lechleitner. I don't know how to say this word. Lechleitner. Patrick Lechleitner is on the morning joke today on MSNBC with Joe Scarborough. And Julia Ainsley asks him if there should have been executive action taken at the border and if it should have been done sooner. And cut 15, listen to this.
A lot of that came down. Those numbers drastically fell, especially starting in June when the new executive action went into place. Do you think that Biden should have taken that action earlier?
Yes.
Why?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, he should have. The administration should have taken that action earlier.
This is, again, the director of ICE. And notice, no pause, right? He works for Joe Biden, was appointed by Joe Biden, and he is unequivocally saying, yes, absolutely, yes, he should have. I'm reading the transcript. This is remarkable to me. If this guy knows, why didn't he do something? Why is he speaking up now that Biden's 5 minutes away from leaving office? And this conversation goes on. I have another clip of it, but it's remarkable to me that everybody says, no, good old Joe, we should have, I don't know. I don't think he was all there. People in the media now, it was clear that he was compromised mentally. How does this happen so late in the game? Everybody took an honest pill? Go ahead.
I think the career people in DHS would have liked that. And all of us in DHS, quite frankly, I don't know if anybody in DHS wouldn't have wanted that earlier. Maybe there's some counselors here or there that don't like this kind of stuff, but law enforcement is always going to be on that side where we want, some tighter controls. Because for a while there, you remember, it was 10,000 plus.
10,000 plus. Look, I don't know Mr. Lechleitner. I've never even heard him before. I don't think I've ever played clips from this guy before. But I can tell you this. I don't think he took an honest pill. I don't think he's having a change of heart. I think what he's doing is trying to save face because he sounds like a young man. He's not a demented old man that will never work again. That's Joe Biden. Joe Biden has no future. Who needs one? He was president. This guy needs a job. He needs to say, hey, I'm a former ICE director. Who wants me? And he doesn't want to be the ICE director that comes across looking like an idiot, saying, no. Yeah, no, we look, 20 million new people, wide open border, rapists, murderers, you name it, all of them. Yeah, gotaways, fentanyl, human trafficking, human smuggling, sex trafficking, slave labor, children, missing. Yeah, that was me. He's not going to say that. He's going to say, oh, man, listen, all we did was fight tooth and nail with this guy. But, like they said on the news the other day, man, he really was, we didn't know how badly he was compromised. I mean, Karine Jean-Pierre and Jen Psaki, Silent P, of course, they did a great job covering it up, and we didn't know. And Kamala Harris, the vice president, how bad she is, Kamala Harris also hid it from us and never, ever once asked for the 25th Amendment because he was, non-compos mentis. No, of course not. Unbelievable. Anyway, he goes on saying, yeah, we could have done more. Listen to this.
Biden had an exit interview this week where he was asked about his regrets, and he did not mention the border. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me, but it's unfortunate because I think we could have done more.
Should have done more.
What?
He should have done more. I mean, it's that simple. Unbelievable. Go ahead.
Specifically.
We could have put more resources to it, either at CBP and for the border itself and with ICE. And we could have went and tried to get more of these individuals who are on the non-detained docket. And we could have detained more people, and we could have removed more people. And I think we could use more resources and support. And we could have done that in the last, 4 years.
Ainsley, right? Miss Julia Ainsley, the question was not what specifically. The question is, why didn't you? Why didn't you, and why didn't you quit if you couldn't? Why did you support the impeached Alejandro Mayorkas? Why did you support the criminal syndicate operated by Joe El Baboso Biden and his co-conspirator, Kamala Harris, the vice president, overseeing the largest human smuggling, child trafficking operation in American history at the southern border at the taxpayer's expense? Why did you allow it? That'd be my question for Mr. Lech Leitner. Mr. Lech Leitner, I'm sure you live in the D.C. area. We have the benefit of being on in the D.C. area. So if you can hear me, sir, give us a call. 833-482-5337. I don't want to just beat you up without giving you a chance to respond. And folks in the control room are Count Delacula, Bill Barnett. If you guys can reach out to Mr. Patrick Lech Leitner, the ICE director, and invite him to come on America at Night with me, Rich Valdez, and instead of the Morning Joe, the Morning Joke, as I like to say, with Joe Scarborough, then maybe we could tell a few million other people what's going on and why these things happened. I don't think you have a good answer, and I don't think you're going to accept my invitation, but I'd really be happy if you did. Anyway, we're going to continue some of this conversation. I got a lot more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, it ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's going to be determined by the local.
That's Gavin Newsom, governor of California, saying, look, I'm the governor, but I don't know what's going on with the water. They ran out of water. What do you want me to tell you? It's a local thing. It's not dissimilar, you know. I mean, people run out of water all the time when they have massive wildfires. So, it's not dissimilar at all. Sir, you are a pendejo, a classic, a true pendejo in every sense of that word. And I got to tell you, he's a real disappointment. If I were from California, I'd be so embarrassed of that man, the way I have been embarrassed of Phil Murphy, the way I've been embarrassed of Kathy Hochul, the way I've been embarrassed of all of these people that really suck at their jobs. And he's going to go ahead and find some scapegoats. One of them going to be Janice Quinones, the CEO of the Los Angeles Water and Sewage Department. And I think that's what it's called. And she had to give a very nervous response to a panel of her peers today. It looked like a hearing that was going on, or a press conference. I'm not sure exactly the forum, but I know that she seemed nervous, and it was very difficult for her to get through this, because I think she also feels badly about this, right? Realizing that this is a career-ending thing for her, likely. You know, how does she, just like the guy from ICE, you know, she's the Joe Biden in this scenario. When Newsom's done with her, he's going to say, I'll run for president a couple more times, and I'm a former governor. But that lady, the CEO of the Water Commission, I'll tell you, she's the reason we didn't have any water. The firefighters had no water. They were using women's pocketbooks in order to fetch water, because they didn't even have pails. I mean, that's just nuts what's going on. Anyway, I want you to listen to Janice Quinones. She's the CEO of the Los Angeles Department of Water, and she confirms that firefighters battling the Pacific Palisades fire had no access to water due to fire hydrants running out because of an unprecedented demand for water that impacted the pressure in the reservoirs. Listen to this.
We ran out of water in the first tank at about 4:45 p.m. yesterday. We ran out of water on the second tank about 8:30 p.m. and the third tank about 3 a.m. this morning. Those tanks help with the pressure on the fire hydrants and the hills of Palisades. And because we were pushing so much water in our trunk line, and so much water was being used before it can get to the tanks, we were not able to fill the tanks fast enough. So the consumption of water was faster than we can provide water in our trunk line. So I want to make sure that you understand there's water on the trunk line. It just cannot get up the hill because we cannot fill the tanks fast enough.
So they can't fill the tanks fast enough. Now, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, he weighed in saying that this is something that would never, ever happen again. Listen to this.
On California, Mr. President, during the pandemic, you often said that you didn't believe that you should bail out blue states, that you believe were being mismanaged. Given your criticism of Governor Gavin Newsom, are you willing to work with him, and do you believe that federal aid should be provided to California for as long as it takes?
Well, it's very sad, because I've been trying to get Gavin Newsom to allow water to come. You'd have tremendous water up there. They send it out to the Pacific because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish, which is in other areas, by the way, called a smelt. And for the sake of a smelt, they have no water. They had no water in the fire hydrants today in Los Angeles. It was a terrible thing. And we're going to get that done. It's going to finally be done. I got it done from the federal side, and he didn't want to sign it, but it's not going to happen again like that.
Californians, 6 million, more than 6 million of you. I think that the third highest amount of people in this country that voted for President Trump were in California. And you Californians that voted for Trump, good for you. Those that didn't, you should have. This guy clearly, whether you like him or not, he likes you. He wants California to be great again. He wants you to have water in your fire hydrants, and he wants your buildings to not burn. That simple. I'm not trying to be political. I'm trying to be commonsensical. I really am. Now, people that lack some common sense, in my opinion, the mayor, Karen Bass, in a briefing earlier today, she gets into a tense exchange with some reporter over the lack of preparedness for all of this stuff. And I'm not going to call them wildfires anymore, because I saw a bunch of homeless people cooking. That started a fire. I also saw a video of people starting fires in a park. That's not good either. Listen to Mayor Karen Bass.
You were out of the country at the time. Shortly after the fire started, a press release was put out warning of this fire behavior. My question to you is, what explains this lack of preparation and rapid response?
Let me just say, first and foremost, my number one focus, and I think the focus of all of us here with one voice, is that we have to protect lives, we have to save lives, and we have to save homes. Rest assured that when rest assured, let me finish. Rest assured, when that is done, when we are safe, when lives have been saved and homes have been saved, we will absolutely do an evaluation to look at what worked, what didn't work, and to correct or to hold accountable any body, department, individual, etc. But my focus right now is on the lives and on the homes.
That's Mayor Karen Bass. And interestingly, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas was on CNN, and she says, you know what, this is good. If we were good enough to build this country, meaning African Americans, and serve overseas, we're good enough to serve in other ways. She takes it as a whole racial thing, the fact that these people are failing. Listen to this.
Because you are a woman, or because I know that some of the right has been sharing these photos of the fact that I believe that the fire chief may be a woman or something, that has nothing to do with it. We are looking at qualifications. What diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been about is saying, you know what? Open this up. Don't just look at the white men. Open it up and recognize that other people can be qualified. And the fact that we want to, at a time when people are dying, decide that a country of immigrants is failing or people are dying because the same very people that built this country, because the last time I checked, y'all didn't say that anything was wrong with the White House. And I can promise you, it was my ancestors that built the White House. So listen, if we have been good enough to build this country, we are good enough to serve and die overseas, we are good enough to serve in other ways. And
maybe then we should have your ancestors serving in the governor's mansion in California and get rid of Gavin Newsom. Maybe we can make sure that there is water, enough water, not protecting endangered fish, but protecting human beings so that they can get the water that they need, right? Maybe we can have the water pressure we need in the fire hydrants. Maybe, right? Maybe we can focus on a fire chief that is making sure that you can get people to safety on time instead of making sure that we have a smorgasbord of race and ethnicity and sex, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Come on, Congresswoman Crockett. You've got to be kidding me. Anyway, folks, more to come straight ahead. We're going to find out what goes into the anatomy of a wildfire. Somebody that is expert on the Maui wildfires and is going to juxtapose some of that with what's going on right here in the United States, stateside, continental stateside in Los Angeles. So keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back. Plus, your calls are coming up after that. Don't go anywhere.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Hollywood is unleashing fury on Los Angeles' Democratic leadership as wildfires rage across the Pacific Palisades, claiming lives and destroying iconic homes. Actress Sarah Michelle Gellar led the charge, blasting Mayor Karen Bass on Instagram for the city's failure to manage evacuations. Gellar tagged Bass, writing, "You want everyone to evacuate, yet there's complete gridlock, and not one traffic cop on the roads helping." Actor James Woods, who lost his home, went further, blaming liberal idiots like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass for what he called disastrous fire management. Sharing a heartbreaking photo of his former home engulfed in flames, Woods wrote, "It tests your soul, losing everything at once." Meanwhile, actress Sarah Foster didn't hold back, slamming high taxes and alleged mismanagement. She accused leaders of neglecting fire hydrants and vegetation clearance while focusing on far-left policies. Bass and Newsom resign. Your policies have ruined our state and our party.
That is a report on what's going on with the celebrities from Brian Fass, 2 A's, 1 S, from the New York Post. And, of course, they're cannibalizing one another over there because they're upset. They're upset that their state, their city, their home, their county, Los Angeles, is ablaze. It's being destroyed. And it's sad. It's sad for me. I have nothing to do with Los Angeles, but I have something to do with humanity, and I have something to do with people and my fellow Americans. And it's brutal to watch. Today I saw smoldering flames approaching the Hollywood sign, and it was just like, wow. I remember I produced a short film once that independently screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 2014 with James O'Keefe Media Group. And I remember part of our graphic was adding, flames to the Hollywood sign, and like Hollywood's going up in flames. And it wasn't foreshadowing or anything like that. It was just like, a play on what the movie was about. But to see that becoming a reality today was just so surreal. And I want to talk to somebody who understands what I'm calling the anatomy of a massive inferno, the anatomy of a wildfire, because they've experienced this, right? Stephanie Pierucci is the author of a book called Sound the Alarm, the Maui Disaster That Sparked a Global Awakening. And you remember the Maui fire, which there's all sorts of stories, and I remember seeing that. It was horrific to watch, wiped out an entire community. And this is no different. And in fact, the co-author of Stephanie Pierucci lives in Malibu and is witnessing a lot of what's going on right now, saying it's very similar to what occurred in Maui. So that's Tracy Derwin, and of course our thoughts and prayers with her and everybody in that area. And I want to bring our guest in, Stephanie Pierucci. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. I appreciate you taking the time to kind of walk us through this and tell us about the book and tell us how similar it is, to what happened in Lahaina, because I think we all remember seeing that. And just now, I believe, day 3 of this inferno, at least I think it's day 3, people, I'm talking to people, and I'm like, what do you think is going on in California? And, still a lot of people here in the New York area don't know what's going on, but there's a lot more. They're like, oh my gosh, I just saw that on my phone, or I just saw that last night on the news. And this is scary stuff, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. 2 weeks ago, Tracy Derwin, along with an expert in fires and physics and meteorology, they did a video, and they said, there's some cloud seeding or some atmospheric injection above Area 51 directed over Southern California. This could have made it dry and windy. And they had some speculation 2 weeks ago that something was going to happen. And so they've been documenting in real time all of the different things that we saw also in Lahaina. So bizarre burn patterns and, of course, what some people call chemtrails. We've been directed to call it stratospheric aerosol injection, but they've been documenting some things that could.
What do you think is in that? I see that stuff all over the place. I live by a small airport, Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, and I see it all the time. And I've read the articles, but I have no idea what's in there.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's important for the purpose of these fires is it does make people a little more foggy, no pun intended. Makes things a little slower, causes people to feel a little bit detached. But it's functionally an accelerant for these fires. It messes with the humidity. The metals and other things in those injections are actually going to accelerate the fire. And, in addition to that, we look at things like the wind patterns. People who I know who've been in that area for 30 years have never, ever seen winds like this, knocking things down in their yards that have been sitting there for 30 years.
Wow. Well, I got to tell you, I'm not going to say it's unprecedented wind, but I don't remember the last time it was this windy in January where I live. I got garbage cans flying all over the place in my backyard. It's very windy here on the East Coast as well. So I don't know if that's just a weather thing or if this has to do with some of the cloud seeding and other weather manipulation, for lack of a better word, that's going on.
You know, one of the excuses for the cloud seeding is to make it cooler. And so a lot of what we're seeing in Lahaina, what we saw in Asheville, and what we're seeing in LA right now is this climate change narrative, or what I call climate alarmism. And so you'll see this being peppered throughout legislation before these disasters happen. And one of the reasons that people ultimately give up a lot of sovereignty and rights is because of this climate change narrative. And so that we go deep, deep, deep into that in my book, Sound the Alarm. But one of the excuses, because right now there are patents for this, weather engineering. One of the excuses is, well, we have to control the climate because the Earth can't do it by itself.
Now, after looks like thousands of interviews and all the research you guys have done, visiting these destinations in Maui, and you and the co-authors here put this thing together. And I didn't realize this is a sequel to a previous book called Burn Back Better. Tell me what you learned in this book and how it differs from the other.
Yeah, it differs a lot. So Burn Back Better is sort of like your elementary, here are some of the anomalies. So we went through everything that happened on a political level. We went through the culture and some of the predictive programming in terms of language being used throughout Maui. We talked about different people who were hired, some of them illegally, into positions of authority. We discussed anomalies with, burn patterns and stuff like that. We talked about,
I want to chime in real quick there because I've been seeing some of this, at least on social media. Like I saw one news report of a woman saying, she was next to a car and the car was charred. I mean, charred more than any car I'd ever seen before, like no paint or nothing. And when she looked down, the camera panned down. She said that looks like the tires that melted. She tapped it with her foot and it sounded like tin. And she said it's molten metal. And she was saying it's that hot that it happened. And, the rest of the car didn't melt. So leading, her to say it seems like at some point there was a very, very hot fire that melted part of the front of the car, but not the back of the car. It was just very interesting. What do you make of all that with these interesting burn patterns?
Yeah, I mean, the anomalies that we're seeing in the burn patterns, the way that things are burning that would never, ever burn in a brush fire. So your average brush fire is about 14 or 1,500 degrees. Could get a tiny bit hotter, but not likely. Aluminum melts fine at 1,200 degrees, but glass and steel require at least 2,500 degrees, and porcelain requires 4,000 to 5,000 degrees. So one of the things that tipped people off, one of the red flags, was the fact that you're seeing porcelain toilets melted in Lahaina. That's impossible in a brush fire. And so those are some of the details that we went into in the first book. And we said, here are the questions you need to be asking. And so then in the second book, we said, here's some of our answers after talking to engineers, meteorologists, arborists, and other experts.
Folks, we're on with Stephanie Pierucci, one of the authors of Sound the Alarm, the Maui disaster that sparked a global awakening. It looks like we're seeing it yet again in Los Angeles. Now, Stephanie, I want you to continue to walk us through the book in the next couple of minutes because I feel like this is something that a lot of us, we just don't understand, but I want to take a pause right here and come right back. Folks, we're coming right back with Stephanie Pierucci, author of Sound the Alarm, the Maui disaster that sparked a global awakening.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I hate to even ask this question, but the president-elect chose to attack you, blame you for this.
One can't even respond to it. I mean, people are literally fleeing. People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools. Families completely torn asunder. Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it. I have a lot of thoughts, and I know what I want to say. I won't. I stood next to a president of the United States of America today, and I was proud to be with Joe Biden, and he had the backs of every single person in this community. He didn't play politics, didn't try to divide any of us.
That's Gavin Newsom on CNN yesterday with Anderson Cooper, and our guest, Stephanie Pierucci, author of the book on the Maui fire, and quite a book it is. I recommend getting a copy for yourself, one to give away. It's called Sound the Alarm, the Maui disaster that sparked a global awakening. And Stephanie, in the limited time that we have remaining, your thoughts on the political ramifications of this and the major takeaways in the book.
I'm actually really excited because the more we speak out and the more interviews, book signings, et cetera, that we're doing, the more we realize that there have been, in California specifically, a lot of people scared to state how they feel. And this is sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, because when things are not in your backyard, it's easy to just scroll past them, so to speak. I feel really grateful that people recognize, well, we've got all these 2028 smart city plans, and the Olympics is coming to town, and there's all this affordable housing concern. We've done all these DEI hires. We cut, the fireman budget. We have, we're hiring people based off sexual orientation. We fired people for not taking the jab. A lot of things politically have gone on that have contributed, not to mention the water being diverted and not saving people's homes so they could protect these smelt fish. And so I think this is a wake-up call that needed to happen. The glass half full perspective is that every time there's a disaster like this, such as in Asheville, and things add up against the government, it's going to force people to vote differently.
Outstanding. And let me get your, I'd say, the number one takeaway that you have for people that are interested in the book. What's the one sentence? Why should they get it?
The reason people need to read this book is because this can happen in your own backyard, because what's happening is not really an LA thing, a Lahaina thing, or an Asheville thing. This is coming from a globalist agenda. And so my book will give you that playbook so that you can determine if your community is next.
Stephanie Pierucci, outstanding conversation. Let everybody know how they can get in touch with you, how they get a copy of the book.
It's themauibook.com.
And if they want to follow you on social media, where do they go?
I do a little bit on X. It's S_Pierucci. And I'm fairly easy to reach because my phone number is right on my website and people call it all the time.
Outstanding. Folks, Stephanie Pierucci, author of Sound the Alarm, the Maui disaster that sparked a global awakening. Stephanie, I appreciate you taking the time and the scholarship that you guys put into the book, and Godspeed to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Folks, your calls and more are coming up right now. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
you are educating the public, and the public is getting good information if they listen to your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
President Trump, just a few minutes ago, the Supreme Court ruled that they are not going to slow down the sentencing. It's on for tomorrow. Now what?
Well, they called for an appeal, and as you know, they acknowledged what the judge said about no penalty, and there's no penalty. But we're going to appeal anyway, just psychologically, because, frankly, it's a disgrace. It's a judge that shouldn't have been on the case. He's a highly conflicted judge, and they called for an appeal. So I read it, and I thought it was a fair decision, actually. So I'll do my little thing tomorrow. They can have fun with their political opponent. As you know, I'm under a gag order from a judge. This is a first. This was an attack of a political opponent. And if you take a look at it, I'm not supposed to be talking about it, so I won't.
That, of course, Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito, the 45th and 47th president of these United States. Donald J. Trump, the president-elect, soon to be 47th president in just a few more days, 11 days to go. And interesting comments. He said he thinks it's a fair decision because he's still going to be able to appeal it, and he knows the outcome of it is that he's not getting locked up, and he's going to continue to do his job either way. So good for him, good for America. Let's go to the phones, 833-4-Valdez, Boise, Idaho, in the building, KBOI. Paul, go for it.
Good evening. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Marshawn's, I think he's running the gamut. He's pulled out all the stops. He fell for Bragg's idea, and that's to change one misdemeanor basically into, which was supposed to be an agreement.
Into 34 felonies?
Into 34 felonies. It's ridiculous. It's unheard of. It's never happened before anywhere. And, you can see the hate in his eyes when his name is mentioned.
I wonder if like the way Biden had his son being a bag man, I wonder if Mershon's daughter, hypothetically speaking, was a bag man for him because she was raising millions of dollars for the Democrats as a fundraiser. I'm wondering if she was hitting him back with any of that. That'd be interesting, right, Paul?
Well, it would have to be off the table. It'd be hard to find out, but that's how I feel about it, Rich. You hit the nail right on the head with that.
Yeah.
It gets worse. You saw what it was doing to Trump when he was at the table, the defendant's table, and they thought they were winning, but in the long run, it cost them, and I think it cost them dearly. And not just
I think so.
Election, but the next one too, the midterms.
I hope so. I hope that the momentum carries through to the midterms. It definitely cost them a lot. They lost a lot of political capital. And I think just so many things are causing them to lose. Gavin Newsom can try what he wants and say that it's Trump's fault. He's taking shots, but the reality is people realize it. These celebrities that are speaking out, like Valentin, I think Smirkovsky's his name. He's the one of the top dancers on Dancing with the Stars, saying this is what we're paying taxes for to live in this place. People pay a fortune to live in L.A. And he's right. It sucks over there. Anyway, Paul, thanks for your call, my brother. Tony in Montreal, thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Folks, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless. We're going to talk about BRICS. Will it survive? Will it not? Keep it locked right here. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.